Feel free to ask questions. You can raise your hand. Feel free to ask questions and please don't stay silent because we need the interaction. We need that interaction so I can know how much you all understand. Okay?
Yes, miss.
Okay.
So let's begin. We only have an hour. At 7, the meeting is ending. Any questions? I'm not going to I am not going to give you all questions. You all asking me questions.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My question is I want to I'm not understanding the or the importance of the sodium transport.
What about sodium transport?
Just I understand what the significance in it because there's a lot of other things are transported, but why single out sodium?
What do you understand by sodium transport?
Well, I know sodium is basically like the salt, right? And wherever salt is, water does follow. So, but still, I just understand everything. But was it single out like that, and not the transport of any other the substances?
Probably because it's a topic that's going to come for exam. So you need to know
Yeah.
sodium transportation.
Okay.
So since we're on the topic of sodium transport, can you explain sodium transport to me?
Just what are my notes? One second.
Everyone know that sodium transport is on page 8 of the handout. There are 7
Right.
steps.
Yes, the sodium is part of the dialysate solution, right? And it is high. Sodium in dialysate is often hypertonic, meaning there's a high concentration of sodium, and it is moved by water.
Yes.
Somebody help me.
Okay, anyone else wants to try giving an explanation of explaining sodium transport and how it works? No, we are not here. We are not here to stay quiet, right? We are here to conversate and have a meaningful communication. And you all need to get out that thinking factor, right? It have nothing like shame in answering. We are on page 8 of the handout. There are 7 steps of sodium transport.
Excuse me, miss.
Yes.
Okay, so how I did it, kind of break it down is I break down like each one of his steps.
Yes.
like my kind of own way. I read it to you and see if it's like okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Sodium transport. Step 1. Dialysate is transported into the yeah, peritoneal cavity. The dialysate is often hypertonic, meaning the concentration of sodium in the dialysate is high. Step 2. Movement of water without sodium occurs through channels specific to water transport known as aquaporins.
Aquaporins, yeah.
Step 3. The water line is transport. Initially, the sodium is held back by the semi-permeable membrane. It is referred as sodium sieving.
Sodium sieving. Nice.
Sorry. Step 4. With a short dwell of 2 to 4 hours, the water is moving from the blood to the dialysate, which is a much greater weight than sodium, which means the water will be saltier. Step 5. With a long dwell period, the concentration of sodium in the dialysate will decrease because it's water moving from the blood to the dialysate. Step 6. The concentration of sodium in the blood will now be greater than sodium in the dialysate. This will be because a concentration gradient promotes the shift of sodium from the blood to the dialysate. Step 7. Moving sodium with water can also occur by convection, resulting in the removal of sodium with the fluid that ends up in the drain bag.
Okay, so what Shania just did is she went through the steps, right? Step 1 to 7. So let's go through this again. Everyone have the handouts in front of them. So
Yes.
we are going to go through it again and go through step
Yes,
by
ma'am.
step with an explanation, right? So let us look at how sodium is transported. Step 1, dialysate is installed into the peritoneal cavity. This dialysate is often hypertonic, meaning the concentration of sodium in the dialysate is high. So basically, there's a large amount of sodium in the dialysate, right? And they're putting this dialysate into a peritoneal cavity, which is in the abdomen. In peritoneal dialysis, movement of water without solutes, such as sodium, occurs through channels specific to water transport known as aquaporins. So, the aquaporins is responsible for the water transportation, right, in peritoneal dialysis. So, aquaporins is the name of the water transport channels. Step 3. Since water alone is transported initially, the fact that the sodium is held back by the semi-permeable membrane, which is the peritoneum, is referred to as sodium sieving. It's just like if you have a strainer, you understand? So all the water coming out and leaving all the salts behind. You all understand that? The water is being passed through the aquaporins, leaving the sodium behind, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, with short dwells of 2 to 4 hours, the fact that water is moving from the blood to the dialysate in a much greater way than sodium means that the water in the blood will be saltier. So, understand that the rate that the water coming from the blood through the aquaporins, right, because remember the dialysate already have sodium too, right? It will be is like the water moving faster than how the sodium moving. It's not moving at the same pace, right? So the water is coming through quickly, and the sodium is coming through slowly, right? This results from the fact that the sodium is being kept back in the blood in a decreased amount of water. So you understand the fact that the water is coming through faster than the salt, right? The salt is being kept back in the blood, right? With a decreased amount of water. So therefore, the water in your blood will just become saltier, right? Since the water is moving more effectively from the blood to the dialysate, you can compare this to having salt in a cup of water, and if you get rid of some of the water and keep the same amount of salt, the water will be more salty. So, if you take out that now, that's a good example. You put 5 spoons of water, 5 spoons of salt in a cup of water and fill the cup, right? It wouldn't be so salty. But if you throw out half of that water with the same 5 spoons of salt, then you'll have more salt than water, right? So it's like the movement of the water, because the movement of the water going faster than the movement of the salt in the blood. With a longer dwell period, the concentration of sodium in the dialysate will decrease because there is more water moving from the blood to the dialysate, thereby making the sodium concentration in the dialysate much less. So remember, the dialysate is filled with sodium, right? Yes, there's sodium in the blood, right? But the fact that the amount of salt that there is in the dialysate, it is being decreased because the water is being pulled through the aquaporins in the peritoneum, right? So the water is coming through these aquaporins and going into the dialysate faster than the salt in the blood, right? Because the aquaporins is the channels that only that you can say only water going through, right? So the more water you add, it's like the more water you add to the cup of salt, it will be less saltier, like what we were saying, right? So the dialysate has this great amount of salt. The longer you leave the dwell inside the peritoneum, the more water pulling into the dialysate. You understand? So therefore, the amount of salt will decrease because it's like you're adding. That's just like if you're making juice, right? When you're making juice, everybody know about tang, right? So if when you throw the whole pack of tang in a bottle and you add a little bit of water, this thing just real sour. So what you're going to do? Add more water. When you add more water, it will become diluted. Well, you understand? So it's like it dilutes the tang more, you understand, making it more watery. Same thing with the dialysate. The dialysate have a high amount of salt, right? And then with the water passing through the aquaporins and getting pulled, the amount of salt in the dialysate will decrease, right? And it will become more dilute.
Miss Excuse.
Yes.
I think when I was reading that, right, I tried to understand that it does dilute until it have no more salt, and it's time to change the dialysate.
Yes, it's something like that. That's why I say with a longer dwell period. So the longer the dialysate remain in the peritoneum, is the more water that you're able to pull, right? Because remember, it has to reach an equilibrium, right? It's like an equality then, right? So with a longer dwell period, the concentration of sodium in the dialysate will decrease because there is more water moving from the blood to the dialysate, thereby making the sodium concentration in the dialysate much less. And that's why I use the example of having a pack of tang and a glass of water, right? you have a pack of tang and you throw it in a glass of water, you all want me to do an example and actually show you with the glass of water. If you have or that's like, yeah. So you have a glass of water and you have sugar, right? You half in the glass of sugar. So you have a half glass of sugar alone, right? And then you throw a half glass of water into the sugar. Now this will be very sweet, right? But the more water you add to the sugar is the less sweet that it will be. Same thing, or the less salty that it will be, right? So the high concentration of sodium in the dialysate at the beginning of the dwell, before, right? Before the 2 to 4 hours that this dwell staying inside here, the sodium high, right? But the sodium will be pulling the fact that the sodium is high and the aquaporins, the water going through the aquaporins, right? The dialysate pulling the water. So therefore the dialysate, the amount of sodium in the dialysate will decrease because it come like it just adding water to it, right? Everybody understand that?
Yes, miss.
That's why
Yes,
at the
ma'am.
ending,
Yes.
that's why at the ending of step 5, I said this is the same as pouring more water into a cup containing salt water, thereby making the salt water less salty. Right? So it's simple to understand. The dialysate at the beginning is salt. It have a high concentration of salt, right? And the longer that it is in the peritoneum, right, the more water it pulls, making the dialysate solution less salty, right? The concentration of sodium in the blood will now be greater than the sodium in the dialysate because of what happened in step 5, right? And this is just like when, remember last week we was talking about the back diffusion.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Right. So basically, that is what occurred in there. Due to the fact that it have a high concentration of salt in the dialysate, water moving from the aquaporins and coming into the dialysate, but whilst this dilution is taking place, salt also going in, because remember the peritoneum semi-permeable is a semi-permeable membrane. So it's like it have salts going into the blood also at the same time. So that is why the concentration of sodium in the blood will be greater than the sodium in the dialysate, right? Because there's an exchange happening. This will cause a concentration gradient that promotes the shift of sodium from the blood to the dialysate. Moving the sodium with water can also occur by convection, resulting in the removal of sodium with the fluid that ends up in the drain bag. So let's go over this again, right? In a brief explanation. With the dialysate that is instilled into the peritoneal cavity is hypertonic, meaning it has a high concentration of sodium. And due to this high concentration of sodium, right, you are able to pull water through channels called what?
Aquaporins.
Nice. Called aquaporins, right? And these aquaporins, they could say these aquaporins only let water pass through, right? That's why they call it aquaporins. Just for you to understand. So the salt is being held back by the semi-permeable membrane, which in this case is the peritoneum, right? And this is called sodium sieving, right? And so with short dwells, 2 to 4 hour dwells, the fact that the water is moving from the blood to the dialysate in a much greater way than the sodium, due to due to the fact that the peritoneum is a semi-permeable membrane and this is holding back the salt. Man, put on the light. Put on the light so you could see. Yes. Due to the fact that the semi-permeable membrane, which in this case is the peritoneum, is holding back the salt and the water is moving so fast through the aquaporins, putting the dialysate with the peritoneum, right? So the amount of salt in the dialysate in the peritoneum is being decreased. Meanwhile, the salt in blood is being increased, right? Because it has an exchange going on there. Somebody explain it for me.
Excuse me, miss. At the end of yours, raw breaking up.
We are not here to just stay quiet, because I will stay quiet for even too. Okay.
No, Miss Sarah, we're not hearing
Miss, we wasn't
properly.
hearing you for a while. Miss, you're
But
breaking
I
up.
wasn't here for a while and my audio on.
No, but you're breaking up, so we can't hear you
But you was
clearly.
breaking up just now.
Okay, so after I re-explain everything then. Well, so where did you all hear me up to? So I was breaking up and nobody say, well, me say breaking up and stop to say, well, me say breaking up. You're not hearing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the dialysate that is installed into the peritoneal cavity is filled with sodium, right? So it is hypertonic, right? And we have these channels called aquaporins where the water is being transported, right? So due to the fact that the semi-permeable membrane, which is the because my mic is on and I'm speaking very loudly right now. All right, next to
I
my
hear
internet
you.
box and my Wi-Fi straight up. It
Good
just
afternoon. Good afternoon,
I
everybody.
don't know what is the problem
Um,
because I right next to my Wi-Fi box and I probably say the same thing like 40 times.
I am hearing. I'm hearing as well.
Me too. Vishala, I think you need to check your connection.
Sarah hearing.
Okay, so I'll try not to waste time here, right? Because we only have until 7. So I'm going to go again. The dialysate that is installed into the peritoneal cavity is full of sodium. Now, I'm speaking off of the top of my head, so at no point in time I will be saying the same thing twice, right? So this is why my words will change, because I'm not reading from anything. I just have the handout and I'm speaking from the top of my head, right? So the dialysate that goes into the peritoneal cavity is full of sodium. And it is called, with this dialysate being full of sodium, we refer to it as hypertonic, right? So we have this hypertonic, concentration of dialysate. And with this being instilled into the peritoneum, right, we have channels called aquaporins where water passes through. So with the sodium being high in the dialysate, it pulls the water, right? So it's like, because you're trying to, how to say it? It's an exchange, right? It's trying to reach equilibrium. I will say it like that, right? Because remember, it have sodium in your blood also, but the semi-permeable membrane is holding back the sodium in the blood, and the water is being passed through the aquaporins. So the water is being pass through the aquaporins much faster than the sodium is being passed through the semi-permeable membrane, right? And with this water being passed through to the dialysate, then the salt in the dialysate, it will start to decrease because remember, it's like you're adding water to it, right? Just like if you have a cup of salt and you continue adding water, it will get less and less salt, yeah, right? So the longer you have the dwell in, is the more you're able to pull from the blood, right? But remember, when you pull in water, yes, it get the dialysate concentration, it getting less saltier, but is also being pushed into the blood due to the back diffusion, right? Just like with the glucose, right? Everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, I just make it
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Yes, miss.
Right. So the sodium in the dialysate will decrease because more water is moving from the blood to the dialysate through these aquaporins, right? And the sodium concentration in the dialysate will end up being much less after the dwell period, right? And with with the sodium decreasing in the dialysate, the sodium will increase in the blood, right? So at the end of your dwell, the sodium in your dialysate will be less, but the sodium in your blood will be more because it's like an exchange happened due to back diffusion, right? And as I said in step 6, this will cause a concentration gradient that promotes the shift of sodium from the blood to the dialysate, right? The concentration of sodium in the blood will now be greater than the sodium in the dialysate because of what happened in step 5, right? Because remember, the water is being pulled from the blood and going to the dialysate, right? And the sodium from the dialysate also goes to the blood, making the blood salty.
Right.
And basically that is not no big science state. It's just plenty. It look like plenty writing because of the amount of examples that she gave, right? But that's basically it. At the beginning of the dialysis, or the peritoneal dialysis, the concentration of sodium is high, right? Water moves through the aquaporins going into the dialysate during the dwell time. With the water moving through the aquaporins faster than the sodium from the blood, due to the fact that the sodium from the blood is being held back by the semi-permeable membrane, the dialysate will become more diluted, meaning that it will have more water than salt, right? And it will create a concentration gradient also because the salt from the dialysate will also is like back diffuse into the blood, right? So therefore creating an exchange.
Okay.
Miss,
Do you
so
understand?
Sarah, I
basically,
finally understand this thing properly, you know.
oh good.
Yeah, it's just it's really simple.
Miss, so
Yes.
basically, right?
Yes.
I think you'll try to explain it like this too. With the everything being hypertonic and then hypotonic and then isotonic.
That is isotonic is when it is
When it
equality.
reaches equilibrium,
Equality, yeah.
Right. So I know understand, just like the lady said there, I just understand what he was explaining as well. So
Right.
that's the way in which he explained it. But we
Yes,
still could
yes.
understand
Yes, isotonic, where it reaches equilibrium. But it's like you'll still have more salts in the blood because remember it's like through the back diffusion. You understand?
Yeah.
So that is how the blood end up salty to the end.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions? Any questions?
Excuse me, miss. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to know when the exchange occurs. At what stage?
The exchange is consistently occurring because remember they have the water coming through the aquaporins, right? And when this water coming through the aquaporins and the dialysate getting less salty, right? The salt that is in the dialysate also being pushed into your blood. So that is when the exchange is happening
Okay, miss.
during the
Thanks.
dwell time.
You need well time, right?
Yes.
Good.
Remember
Good.
everything, all this diffusion and osmosis and ultrafiltration. Remember all this is happening during the dwell time, right? All the action is taking place during the dwell time.
Sarah, how does pertain into the lymphatic system when the lymphatic system failing?
No, this. Let me see. Okay, so you're talking about that part down there when I say it should be noted that the lymphatic system also plays a role in the transporting solutes such as glucose accumulated during back diffusion and also the clearing of fluid and cellular debris.
Yeah.
If your lymphatic system responsible for your solute transportation, right? If something is wrong with your lymphatic system, therefore it will have a defect in the exchange of salt or glucose during dialysis.
Sarah,
Yeah,
excuse. I did just jot down a few things that Sir said, right?
yeah.
During class. B2 microglobulin. Gosh, these neighbors are
Microglobulin.
right. Lower clearance, tonicity, solute flux, complications of PD, pitfalls of PD, and well, he told us about anuria. The solute flux is not the same thing as the sodium transport, yeah?
Solute flux. What
Mm-hmm.
page that on?
I don't know, some mention it.
Yes,
Was
but
waiting to
what did he
see.
mention solute flux under?
I can't remember. In class, I can't remember what he was talking about.
That had something to do with the concentration, the concentration gradient.
Okay, yeah. So solute flux is that's when he talk about the movement of the solutes, right? Which is the dissolved solutes across the semi-permeable membrane. You understand? Driven by the concentration gradient. That's what you're talking about.
Okay.
Right? So what a solute flux is solute flux is the movement of a dissolved solute across a semi-permeable membrane, driven by a concentration gradient.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to ask the quantity of dialysis.
What do you mean the quantity of
How much,
dialysis?
how much is to be used on the patient? I can't remember. I've been looking, I ain't seen it.
Every patient has a different amount. Every
I think
patient
when
has their own every patient have their
2
own
liters to
prescription.
2.5. It's a 2 liters, 2.5, and it's a one before that. I remember reading it. All right, Shira?
Yes, but every patient has their own prescription and will use a different amount of dialysis.
All right,
Sarah,
thanks.
and that's why there's the peritoneal
The
equilibration
yes,
test to
the
see
PT,
how
yes, the
to
test.
how the patient to be prescribe the dialysis.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Every
And in the peritoneal equilibration test, right? I think
yeah.
I was comparing it to like when I was reading one time they said when you carry bottles to Carib, right? It is in a reach by the Carib, they just weigh the vehicle with the bottles on it, and then they take off the bottles and then they wait again. I was reading something like you can explain that a little bit more for me, please?
What the peritoneal equilibrium test?
Yeah, because I was saying I think you put the dialysis in and you test to see how much it have, and then you take it after you test it again after you're changing
You know,
after the dialysis
yes.
comes out every 2 hours or something like that.
Yes, now I don't mind explaining the peritoneal equilibrium test for you guys, right? But I try to focus more on a whole topic, despite just a subtopic, right? That's why in tutorial last week when we spoke about the peritoneal equilibrium test, I said you don't need to elaborate on it.
Okay, thanks.
Right? So we all know that the peritoneal equilibrium test is used to access how well the peritoneal membrane in the abdomen functions in the patients that is going to do peritoneal dialysis. Right? So
Somebody was
the
asking about the lymphatics. I seen it on
equilibrium test. So what are we doing? We are talking about the lymphatic, so the peritoneal equilibrium test.
Lymphatic, please.
And this is how you all confuse yourselves. That's why we are doing these classes. Because I don't want you all to be you're getting mixed up and here, there, and everywhere. When you start on a topic, you are going along that topic. So what we have started speaking about was sodium transport, and then we somebody asked a question about the lymphatic, right? And then we jumped to the peritoneal equilibrium test, and then we jump back to lymphatic. So what is it that we are really speaking about? What is the question?
Miss Sarah, you was talking about the PET test. Continue with the equilibrium, the lymphatic one. Hold on. That's all. You was
Because we
already
started to talk about the
explaining one.
lymphatics and then they cut across with the peritoneal equilibrium test. Somebody talk about solute flux and then they come back and say no, because we're talking about the lymphatics. So I really want, this is why I say, what is the question?
Stick to what you're explaining and then you answer the next question after.
Miss, you listening?
I'm listening.
Right. As you said, that you didn't want to go into the PET because basically what you're saying is not as important as the other things that you are teaching. Now, I said that somebody asked a question before about the lymphatics and it is on page 7. That's what I said.
Yes.
And
No,
it was
I
my
was still
question.
giving the explanation for as in the definition for the peritoneal equilibrium test, because remember when you're writing an essay, it will be good that you state that a peritoneal equilibrium test is taken or it is done, you understand, in order to know how well the patient will function, you understand? So we know that the peritoneal equilibrium test is used to assess how well the peritoneal membrane in the abdomen functions in patients undergoing peritoneal dialysis.
Okay.
So that is what I wanted you to know. So you don't have to really have to know like how to do the peritoneal equilibrium test. That's you don't need to go so in depth. That is what I meant when I said that it's not important, but you don't need to go so in depth. So just by having the definition of or what the peritoneal equilibrium test does is enough to get you past on a point.
Mr. Vexter is one squad. How are we getting here? No? 1 hour. No?
That's not okay. You're saying it's 1 hour you are getting, but you could always message me. It's have students I be talking to whole day. Literally. Yeah. So even though we have it here, you can message me. I still waiting for some students to say, well, Miss, look, I try to do a essay on the basis of peritoneal dialysis. You understand? Or these are some points,
Miss, but ain't you wasn't well?
That is nothing. My phone working and my mouth and my eye working and my hand working.
I don't know the situation. So that's the last thing I see that you was well, and that's it.
Yeah, miss, when you posted that you was in the hospital, I didn't bother to
Yes, I
send
was in
anything
hospital
about
for like
you.
2 days.
Well,
I
right,
came
I
out.
didn't want to bother you in the hospital.
That's nothing. That's my work. I don't care. I will die doing my work. That is me. Reason why I end up in the hospital in the first place because I was work too much. Yes, Mr. Jessup, I see your hand is up. You have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Listening.
What experimental or emerging technologies could replace augment peritoneal dialysis in the future? Is there a regenerative or cellular level approach that could reduce reliance on dialysis altogether?
Stem cell transplants.
Yes, but it's not really that. I wouldn't say so because if you look to the beginning of your handout, basically what you're looking at is renal replacement therapy, and the only 3 renal replacement therapy is renal transplantation, hemodialysis, and peritoneal dialysis. In order for stem cell to work, right? You cannot be on like a stage 5 or a stage 4 and expect stem cell to just heal back your whole kidneys. I don't believe that it will work like that. From knowing, well, also we just go to conventions and Dr. Noel will be talking about stem cell regeneration and these kind of stuff. Yes, it works, but you still have to catch it in the earlies. Because once the kidneys reach to that stage for stage 5, I highly doubt that the stem cell regeneration will be able to build back a whole kidney working perfectly, right? Yeah, probably in the future. Now this is the future where they say hemodialysis is with the artificial kidney, right? And we know peritoneal dialysis, it involves with the dialysate staying inside the peritoneum, right? But in the future, even with renal transplantation, when you are going to, and Dr. Michael explained renal transplantation, right? Not even that it working, because you get somebody who compatible is still going and have to continue to be taking a whole lot of medication, because that's not your kidney. Remember, what is yours, and what is not yours. So at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you will still have to be going through a whole set of medications and treatments and stuff like that. You understand? Everybody
So the
agree with me
body
or
will,
nobody?
yes, I
Yes,
agree.
Miss
So the
Abby.
body will not reject that kidney.
Yes,
That's
it's
why
not
I have
that
to
you
take all the medication.
Yes, it's not. Yes, and it's not that it basically that your body will reject it. Yes, your body have some chance of rejecting it, but okay, that's like, for example, your body will always be defending itself against foreign foreign substances, right? So we just saying, if you is a A and you get a kidney, right, that matches you, right, it is still not your kidney originally. You understand? So your body is still going to put up some kind of defense mechanism towards this, and you have to be getting a whole set of medications and stuff like that. Dr. Michael, in the next exam, that you all will get that about renal transplant. If it's not, you all didn't already do it. No, it is not here. Yeah. So even though you do a renal transplant, right, you're still going to have to be taking one set of medications and all these stuff to ensure that your body don't fully reject the kidney and stuff like that. And sometimes you get a perfect match and your body still reject it, and you still end up with having to go back onto dialysis. It happens. So in the future, unless they're able to make a perfect artificial kidney that they could place within your system, I don't think that it have anything else that could work. I know that how to say, I know that they was trying to use animal kidneys experiment. They was doing experiments with the pig kidneys to see if the pig kidneys could work in humans, eh? So all now experiments
Yes,
are
I
being
too.
conducted. Experiments
Mhm.
are being conducted to see if they can get a solution for kidney disease. And I just putting this across. Just remember, right now, when you go in the hospital, the first thing they want to look for and tell you have is time you have a little high blood pressure. The first thing they're telling you is you have kidney disease. So also be
They could do
careful when you
dialysis.
go to the hospital. Because just when I was in the hospital last week, they wanted to chuck a catheter in my neck, and I was like, no, I don't have kidney disease.
Oh,
Due to the fact that my pressure
Miss,
was going up, right? And when they did the creatinine test, my no, yeah, up to 8 or
That
something,
is where
something like
that is
that,
where
0.8 or something
yeah.
like that, supposed to be. My creatinine was something like 0.5, and and because they just saw a 1+ protein in my urine, which could be secondary to something else, not kidney disease, right? Because they saw a
yeah,
1+ protein, I heard them start to talk about maybe it's a kidney, and we could no. Right, so just be careful when you guys go into the hospital and stuff like these type of things, because right now, due to the fact that dialysis and kidney disease is one of the most potent things, right? Everything for the doctors is dialysis, right?
yeah.
Yes, because
Remember,
it's younger doctors, they're not
Yes,
giving you a
remember,
chance.
remember
yes,
And they don't
doctors,
listen to you
remember
either.
doctors practice in public healthcare. So they
Yeah.
will always rush to cut. They had to get practice.
no, yes, they also now I went through, and the reason why I ended back up in the hospital was because they also bad diagnosed me, right? And when I was in the hospital, they wanted to cut my spine, but there was nothing wrong in my MRI. They decided that, hey, they want to fix my scoliosis that I have since I small, and I told them no. I'm not going to do any surgery to fix the scoliosis that I have since as well because I walk perfectly fine and it's a slight scoliosis. So you need to be careful of the diagnosis that doctors are giving to you.
Yep.
Miss,
I-
you don't think since COVID it have more cases of kidney disease?
yes, and
Several.
yes, the injections, the vaccines have a lot to do with heart diseases also because I
I
never used
think
to
they put some
suffer from my
solution
heart and
and
I took the
protein.
injection. Yeah, and
They
it is
put some
affecting
kind
me
of
now.
solution of protein in the injection. If you, I think it had a, I read that somewhere that they put protein in the injections, in the vaccine, and now it's causing plenty complications.
Yes.
I don't
So
think it's just that alone, but these new viruses that they're mutating, I think they're targeting the major organs on them. When you get this thing and you get it so bad. So I think it's both the viruses and the vaccines.
And it have a next one coming. So be
I rebuke
careful.
that.
It is done in China.
yeah. So right. Seeing that we coming close to 7 o'clock now, I'm going to type inside the message here. Right? We are going to do sodium. We have done sodium transport. Transport. You all need to read the complications, pitfalls, and the basis of PD, including the transport mechanisms. And also, I would like you all to, there are factors influencing the modality choices. Now, I would say this handout, you see, once you learn this handout, you can pass the whole exam just with this handout. Believe me when I tell you all this.
Miss, which handout?
The handout with the peritoneal dialysis one, because it has all the information that you need in that. It has all the complications, complication 1 to 7, right? Learn it just as is and try to get it in to stick. Learn the 6 pitfalls of peritoneal dialysis also, right? You have the basis of PD there. You have the different types of PD also, right? Or the different types of PD.
Could you just repeat that again, please?
It's, look, I type it right inside the chat right here.
Okay, then,
All
no
the
problem.
topics,
Thank you.
all the topics, I typed it. You all seen it?
Miss, how
Yes,
much
ma'am.
essays?
Yes,
Yes, we
miss.
have.
Not
Excuse?
yet.
How much essays we are most likely to get?
I don't know, I probably might get a whole paper essays. Because every answer is an essay. Okay, with complications, you wouldn't write your complications in as an essay type, right? Your complications will go in points, just like how you've seen it on the paper. Your pitfalls will go in points also because that is points, right? Modality choice, modality factors, that is points, right? So basically, your essay type question will be like the basis of peritoneal dialysis, which is explaining peritoneal dialysis, you understand, and how it works. That's with the different transport mechanisms like the diffusion, ultrafiltration, the back diffusion, like that. So that would be an essay, right? Factors that influence modality choice. That will be points. Understand? So not everything will be essay type, but the points is what you're looking for, and you will like to have all the points in order to get all your marks. So you might get a little 10 marks for the pitfalls, always 7 pitfalls, you get 10 marks. But if you put all the pitfalls, you put all the complications, that could be like a 15 marks. So 10 and 15, that is 25. If you write a good basis on peritoneal dialysis, that's there. So there's an next 15 marks there. So there's 40 marks right there. So with 3 questions and sign it perfectly correct, you get 40 marks. Right? Different types of peritoneal dialysis. Once you're having all the different types, all, not just two, all, the nocturnal, the tidal, everything, right? There's a next 15 marks, there's 55 marks there. Let's say that's how you get some true and false. You know, Dr. Michael does give all you a little 10 marks, a little 10 1-mark questions, right? There's 65 you reach up to, right? And what else? He might give some scenarios, right? And right there you have your 70 marks and you pass. So see how easy it is to get your marks, right? It's just a matter of how well your memory is. Everybody with me?
Yes, miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so Thursday during the tutorial, when I ask for pitfalls and complications, you all should be able to tell me it off your head, because since last week, Thursday, we did it, right?
Okay.
Yes, miss.
Yes.
And I really want you all to read. Now, but now it have students that making 7 marks. For you to make 7 marks, it shows that you ain't really read nothing. And you clearly didn't revise. Right? So we need to do some more reading, right? And during your reading, anything that you bounce up on and you have a question on, you can message me. Now, Dr. Michael told me, stop doing the work for the students. I said, Dr. Michael, I'm not doing the work for the students, but yes, I will help write essays. Dr. Michael said, don't do it for you all. And let you all write your essays and send it to me and let me correct it. So this is also one of the reasons why I did not send the essay on peritoneal dialysis, because I want you all to get thinking, right? Because I could send the essay, but it's how I know that you all understand, right? And the purpose for you all, for you all responding to me is for I to see how well you will all understand. So give it a shot and tell me all about peritoneal dialysis and the transport mechanisms and send it to me.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, miss.
Okay, thank you.
Nice. So any questions before we wrap up?
So this could be done between now and Thursday.
Well, you all had some since last week, Thursday. So I guess that
I was on the
some people would have done it. So for the people that would have done it, and yes, I know that I was in the hospital, so you probably didn't send it, so you can send it to me.
when I was in the hospital, I bring it and come.
Excuse?
Okay.
And you all can also message me.
She that very mess. From the hospital.
Thanks very much to my secretary. Now, I say if I knew you was in the hospital, I was not on the chat, so I did not know you was in the hospital. I'll bring my book and come and sit down next to your bed. But I didn't know.
No problem. That would not be a problem. It would have been great. I had students that visited me whilst I was in the hospital, and I'm very grateful and thankful for them. Right?
You was on the teaching side or the old side?
I was on the old side of the hospital in that hot place.
Oh, in the ghetto. Okay.
Yeah, right. But yes, you all can message me, call me, feel free to call, feel free to message, right? Anything. No, I'm not going to give you all the questions that come in for exams, right? But I have given you all the topics, and all the topics that is in the handout is all the topics that is going to come for exams, right? And I will recommend learning the sodium transport, and also as I said, the pitfalls, the complications. I try to give you topics that I think carries the most marks, right? And you all know when you see a 15-mark questions, you write like if there is no ending. Right? If they say explain peritoneal dialysis, write everything about peritoneal dialysis that you know. You can even add in the peritoneal equilibrium test is done to, you know, to test the
Functionality of the peritoneal
peritoneum.
cavity.
Yes, resistance and whatnot. So guys, everybody, enjoy the night. It was a quite short meeting, but at least we got through some points, right? And I hope that you all understand